My name is Shelly Carter. I am the adoptive mom of Allison Carter. Allie is an American MKUltra survivor. She is a satanic ritual abuse survivor. She is a sex trafficking survivor. All those things linked together. On July the 10th, I virtually called myself to the floor of Congress and made a video addressing the MKUltra hearings because they did not invite any survivors. They did not address any survivors. They spoke with a historian. They spoke with an investigator, and they spoke with a lady that did not belong there. Congress does not give the appearance of having an understanding of what MKUltra is, or the depth of it, how it links to crimes against humanity, how those human experiments, how human and animal experiments, and how human hybrid experiments have not stopped, and how that links to Epstein and what was going on at Epstein Island besides the sex trafficking. Because of that, I will continue to rattle the gates of hell until something breaks loose. I will continue to call myself to the floor of Congress virtually. I hold a master's degree in psychology. I am a first-hand witness based on what I've seen and been told by Allie of her experiences. I am also an expert witness based on the amount of time that I've spent dealing and assessing and documenting Allie's MKUltra programming. Congress would have the world believe that those things stopped, that those things ended. That is not true. That is blatantly not true. Those things have gone underground, and they have increased in the depth of evil. Where initially they were doing experiments on humans and MKUltra programming from Nazi Germany, we brought those scientists here. And now, not only are they doing those experiments on humans, MKUltra-wise, shattering their psyche, creating weaponized DID, they are also creating animal hybrids, human-animal hybrids. They are experimenting on animals and anything else that they can get their hands on. What went on in Epstein Island was not just sex trafficking. It was not just sex trafficking of adult women. It was experiments on children. It was sex trafficking of children. It was human and animal hybrid experiments. And I'm asking you all to continue to bombard Congress with emails, with demands to release the information. The human experiments began in 1932 in the United States of America, and they have continued today. There have been a few payouts, but there has been nobody arrested. There have been no legitimate investigations. I'm asking the American public, why do you think, or why would you think those experiments have stopped? Nobody's been held accountable. Nobody's done a thorough investigation. Bill Clinton came out and gave a half-hearted apology around 1996. And the world went back to sleep thinking those things had stopped. They had not. Bill Clinton's apology was a signal to move those things underground further. There's a short clip that's going to follow what I'm saying right here that shows you the depth of the human experiments that were being done. These things were being done at the hands of the military, the Army, the Navy, MIT, Stanford, and the CDC. Before the CDC was the CDC, a lot of these things were involved in human experiments. Surely you don't think those things had stopped. I'm here to tell you that they did not stop. They increased in severity, they increased in evil, and they continue today.
For 40 years, starting in 1932, medical workers withheld treatment for hundreds of unsuspecting black men infected with syphilis. The purpose? So doctors could track the ravages of the horrid illness and dissect their bodies afterward in what became known as the Tuskegee study.
And for the sake of science, they sacrificed some human beings. And it raised the question, did they really believe these men were human beings? And so we really wonder about their intention as well as their behavior.
The Associated Press exposed this study in 1972, leading to its end.
It is against everything our country stands for.
And 20 years ago this May, President Bill Clinton apologized for the U.S. government.
What the United States government did was shameful, and I am sorry.
But even with an apology and a $9 million settlement, relatives of the men still struggle with the stigma of being linked to the experiment.
Exclusive investigation into a secret government experiment that was carried out in St. Louis. Residents tell us they still remember a mysterious fog, Children would run through it. Mothers would try and close their windows against it. For decades, they all had questions, and now we're seeking answers. The United States Army now admits that it sprayed a chemical that contained cadmium, a known carcinogen, on a neighborhood of more than 10,000 people. Critics say this was done with no warning and no consent. Well, tonight we return to the site of that demolished neighborhood and speak with former residents who believe the government turned them into human test subjects.
It made some of us have headaches, nausea, dizziness.
That's what I remember. It made me sick.
In the 1950s and 60s, in secret, the U.S. Army sprayed zinc cadmium sulfide into the air of a St. Louis housing project, a largely black neighborhood called Pruitt-Igoe.
It was a lose-lose situation for us in Pruitt-Igoe. We were subjects. We were subjects.
My government used me like I was a guinea pig.
They have not come clean with what was in there.
We know that they were giving radioactive cocktails to pregnant women. We know that they were feeding radioactive oatmeal to children in state schools. They've admitted to those things, and they won't release the material related to St. Louis.
It's true. American children in state-run institutions like the Fernald School were fed radioactive oatmeal as part of studies by MIT sponsored by the Atomic Energy Commission. You can see some of the documents Dr. Martino Taylor worked to gather and declassify on MIT letterhead describing experiments on human subjects. The children, some of them orphans, were told they'd be joining a science club. They were promised a quart of milk a day, a trip to a baseball game, to the beach. A copy of the 1994 congressional hearing shows those children, now grown, describing being told the oatmeal was just vitamins and recalling the health problems that followed. Lumps on my arms, my stomach. Pregnant women were also unknowingly given radioactive iron at top hospitals in Tennessee and California to study how radiation crossed the placenta, some later reporting miscarriages, illness, or birth defects. A class action lawsuit resulted in a settlement in the 90s.
What the hell? It's awful. I mean, the biggest thing, and I've learned in 30 years, is it's always the cover-up that enrages people, that hurts people. And I've learned that communities can handle the truth. What they don't handle and where they'll tip a scale is the lie. So this has been a cover-up, and I think that modern-day agencies owe it to them.
You want everyone to know about what happened here.
The truth. Whatever the truth is, we want to know the truth.
The government committee had just revealed something horrifying. Children at a state institution had been fed radioactive cereal. The institution was the Fernald State School in Waltham. Boyce had lived there as a child and eaten that cereal. He'd been a member of that club, they described. For 45 years, he believed joining the science club meant someone cared about him. That morning, sitting in his car on the side of the road, he learned what it actually meant. He was a test subject, and he had always been one. And the people who fed him that breakfast had known exactly what they were doing. The Fernald State School was founded in 1848 as the Massachusetts School for the Feeble-Minded. It was the first publicly funded institution for developmentally disabled people in the Western Hemisphere. By the early 1900s, its superintendent, Walter E. Fernald, had turned it into something else entirely. Fernald sat on the board of the Eugenics Society. He believed certain people were genetically inferior and should be separated from the rest of society permanently. Under his leadership, the school stopped being a school. It became a warehouse. Children were committed there not because they were disabled, but because they were inconvenient. Orphans, foster kids who had run out of foster homes, poor children from broken families, kids who misbehaved or tested below average on IQ exams that have since been thoroughly discredited. At its peak, the institution held roughly 2,500 people across 72 buildings on nearly 200 acres. Historian Michael D'Antonio estimated that at least half the residents would function normally in today's world. Across the country, during the worst decades of the eugenics movement, approximately 200,000 relatively normal children were locked away in more than 100 similar institutions. They were labelled with clinical terms: idiot, imbecile, moron. These were official medical classifications stamped on their permanent records. The conditions inside Fernald were exactly what you would expect from a place designed to make children disappear. Staff forced boys to sit on wooden benches for hours with their arms folded. If you unfolded your arms, you were hit. Children performed unpaid manual labour, making brooms, brushes and furniture, doing maintenance, preparing food. They received almost no education. The most capable residents kept the institution running, while the institution kept them invisible. One building was later described as a place where human waste covered the floors and drugged residents sat half-dressed in rows, moaning. Visitors who came decades later confirmed those descriptions were accurate. This was the daily reality for thousands of American children whose only crime was being born into circumstances no one wanted to deal with. MIT created something called the Science Club. The pitch was simple. Join the club and you would get things no child at Fernald ever received. Extra food, trips outside the institution, tickets to Boston Red Sox games, Mickey Mouse watches, attention from adults who seemed to care. About 90 boys signed up. Fred Boyce was one of them. He later said that life at Fernald was so brutal he would have volunteered for anything. If the scientist had offered an outing in exchange for eating arsenic, his hand would have gone up. The boys did not know what they were joining. Their parents, for those who had parents, received a letter from the superintendent describing special breakfast meals that would help improve the children's nutrition. The letter never mentioned radiation. It never mentioned radioactive isotopes. It used opt-out consent, meaning silence was treated as agreement. And for the children who were wards of the state, the superintendent himself signed the consent forms. The same man who ran the institution approved the experiments on the children in his care. There was no independent oversight. There was no one whose job it was to ask whether this was acceptable. Between 1946 and 1953, MIT professor of nutrition Robert S. Harris and his team conducted 3 separate experiments on Fernald residents. In the first, boys ate oatmeal coated with radioactive iron traces across 7 meals. Their spleens absorbed between 544 and 1,024 millirems of radiation. In the second, 36 boys drank milk containing radioactive calcium traces. In the third, 9 boys were injected directly with radioactive calcium through a syringe. The subjects were between 10 and 17 years old. The total number of children involved was at least 74. Here is the part that should make you set down whatever you were eating. The entire reason these experiments existed was a serial marketing war. In the late 1940s, Quaker oats and cream of wheat were competing for dominance in the American breakfast market. Recent studies had suggested that a chemical called phytate, found naturally in oats, interfered with iron absorption. This gave cream of wheat a potential nutritional advantage. Quaker oats needed data to fight back, so Quaker supplied the cereal. MIT received funding through a named Quaker Oats Fellowship. The United States Atomic Energy Commission supplied the radioactive isotopes, and the Fernald State School supplied the children. A researcher named Bertrand Brill from MIT was asked about the choice of test subjects. Under pressure, he admitted the truth plainly. They should not have used a group that had no way to say no. That sentence reframes everything. The damage was not the radiation. The damage was a system that manufactured consent from people who had no ability to refuse. Children without parents. Children whose legal guardian was the same person approving the experiments. Children who had been classified as subhuman by the state that was supposed to protect them. The radiation was the method. The real violation was the architecture that made these children available. They had been erased from society before the first spoonful of oatmeal ever reached their mouths. And Fernald was not an isolated case. When the story broke in December 1993, it triggered something much larger. Energy Secretary Hazel O'Leary launched a federal investigation into government-sponsored radiation experiments. President Clinton established the Advisory Committee on Human Radiation Experiments in January 1994. Over 18 months, the committee reviewed millions of declassified pages from 6 cabinet offices. What they found was staggering. Between 1944 and 1974, the United States government had sponsored several thousand human radiation experiments on an estimated 20,000 or more unwitting American citizens. At Vanderbilt University in the 1940s, 800 pregnant women were given radioactive iron in drinks described as vitamins. At the University of Iowa in 1953, newborn babies were fed radioactive iodine. In Cincinnati between 1960 and 1971, 200 cancer patients, mostly poor, mostly black, were irradiated without informed consent while being told they were receiving treatment. Prisoners in Washington and Oregon state prisons were used for radiation tests. More than 200,000 military personnel were exposed during atomic weapons tests. 18 people were injected with plutonium at hospitals across the country. Most of them were poor. Most of them were sick. None of them were told what was being put into their veins. In Hanford, Washington, in 1949, the Atomic Energy Commission deliberately released iodine-131 into the atmosphere, contaminating 500,000 acres, including 3 small towns. And here is the detail that should keep you awake. A 1947 internal AEC memorandum recommended that these experiments not be made public. The reason, stated in a direct quote from a government document, was that it might have an adverse effect on public opinion or result in legal suits. They knew. They knew it was wrong. They said so in writing. And they did it anyway because the people they were doing it to did not have the power to stop them. The test subjects were always drawn from the same pool. The institutionalized, the imprisoned, the terminally ill, the poor, the abandoned. The people society had already decided did not count. The advisory committee's final report was released on October 3, 1995 at a White House ceremony. President Clinton called the experiments morally troubling and issued a formal apology. Fred Boyce was there. He watched the president speak. And later he said it was not enough to compensate these guys who had their lives ruined because people were trying to do good. But here is something almost no one mentions about that date. October 3rd, 1995. The single most significant revelation about government experimentation on American citizens was released to the public on the exact same day the entire country was watching the O.J. Simpson verdict. The biggest news cycle in a generation swallowed the story whole. Whether that timing was terrible luck or something more deliberate, I cannot say for certain. But the result was the same. The country barely noticed.
My name is Shelly Ray Carter. I swear under penalty of perjury, what I'm about to say is the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help me God. What needs to be understood about weaponized DID and the American MK Ultra is that they learned how to shatter the psyche into separate pieces that are highly evolved, highly programmed, complete individuals. And what I mean by that is if you take any of Allie's alters, if you physically could figure out a way to remove them from the system and put them outside so you could see them and interact with them, they could stand alone as an entire human being. They are not fragments. They're not pieces of the psyche. They could stand alone. Each of her alters could stand alone. And what I mean by that is if you could take them out of the system, out of the inside of Allie's psyche, they are fully developed individuals that could function in everyday life on their own. I know I'm going to anger a lot of the survivors by what I say, and that's okay. There's a lot of people angry with me, so hop in line. Allie's alters are not fragments. They are individual. Allie's alters are highly programmed and evolved to the point there's no way anybody with any common sense would choose to integrate them back together any more than any of you sitting in seats in Congress would want to be integrated with the neighbor sitting on your right and your left. The field of psychology is a very corrupt field, and in regards to DID and weaponized MK Ultra, they got it wrong. Allie's alters are able to interact with me on an individual basis. They have different likes, they have different dislikes. On the inside, they look different to each other. On the outside, if I were to take pictures, and I've posted those before, if I take pictures of the different alters and their different ages, you can see it with your naked eye. Rep Luna, the reason I am shaking the gates of hell and trying to speak with you guys is because the alters in Allie's system are also children. There's 5-year-old children and newborn children. And what is being done is the people that have done the programming are trafficking them. They are trafficking the children alters in Allie. And I know you guys are having a hard time understanding that. At least I hope you're having a hard time understanding that, because the alternative is that you do understand it and you're trying to silence it. So I'm praying to God you're having a hard time understanding it, and that's the problem that we're dealing with, because the alternative really sucks. Congress. I'm sure about now you're contemplating using a polygraph on Allie or I to get to the truth. I have no problem doing a polygraph for you. What I said is the truth. I will swear on a stack of Bibles all day long. But a polygraph is not admissible in a court of law. It is not a reliable test to give. But I would freely give you a lie detector test, a polygraph test, if that's what you were requesting. But I don't trust you. That's the easiest way to trap and dismiss and silence somebody and you all don't have the best track record. Secondly, if you are looking to do a polygraph on Allie, anybody that has American MK Ultra programming is programmed to be able to beat a polygraph without breaking a sweat. If you are asking for a polygraph for an MK Ultra survivor, you don't understand what you're asking. You don't understand the problem. Because of the compartmentalization of the DID and the weaponization of the DID, you could watch a survivor commit a crime with your own eyes and give them a polygraph test, and if they've switched alters, that alter didn't do that crime, so they would be telling the truth. So be careful what you ask for. It shows that you don't understand what we're talking about. Had I been called to the floor of Congress, I suspect one of the first questions you would want to know of me is how do I know, and how am I so sure, and how am I willing to swear an oath that Allie has American MK Ultra weaponized DID. There are a lot of ways that I know that. I will list some of those here. Early on, when Allie was still in the care of CPS, she would start to tell me on her visits that she couldn't do certain things, she couldn't say certain things, and when I would ask her why not, she would say because she had to serve her country. Allie has no military background. She was not in ROTC in school. She barely had credits. She barely had 10 credits at the time. So that was a really odd thing to say. In 2015, Allie began having psyche evals to assess her for DID. So since 2015 all the way to the present, she's had psyche evals that are consistent that she does have DID. There is no diagnosis in the DSM for MK Ultra, weaponized MK Ultra, weaponized DID. So the closest I can walk you with a legal diagnosis to MK Ultra is her DID and the depth of it. I have personally mapped and documented Allie's alters. I have personally documented and mapped her internal structure. In addition to that, her alters have drawn the internal blueprint that was put in place. It is complex. It is not just a random thing that you could account for just regular DID. It was put into place by the military, and it's hard to explain that here. It would have to be shown to you, the depth of it, but you can't explain it for any other way. There's nothing else that will account for the depth of the weaponized DID that Allie has. In addition to that, she has voice to skull. It's what most people call voice to skull. I was able to map how that works and what it looks like for her system. The people speaking on it, the survivors that are gang stalks and speak on it, they describe it one way. Based on what I've documented and mapped from Allie's system and what Allie has told me firsthand, it looks a little bit different for her. But a lot of times people will use different words to mean the same thing. For instance, my grandmother would call soda or Coke, she would call it pop because she came from the 50s era. I call it Coke. Other people call it soda. Some people call it pop, but it all means the same thing. That's a common theme among survivors. They're describing the same things. They're just using different terminology. In addition to that, many of her alters have high level of training that is out of the scope of anything Allie was raised in based on where she came from, her education purposes. So there are alters that can do things that they should not be able to do. And it's out of the scope of the way she was raised before she came with me. For instance, there are alters that speak other languages that Allie had no access to. During elementary school era, Allie wore a heart monitor. She has no documentation anywhere that she had heart issues or heart conditions. She has not had heart issues or conditions since then. She said that in school, they would check her heart monitor at the elementary school, Bonnie Ole Elementary School, which sits very close to Patton State Hospital. In addition to that, she said she was taken to Patton State Hospital, which is a mental hospital, when she was in elementary school, and they would do things to get her heart to race. Based on what I understand and what I have tracked and documented on her MK Ultra programming, when they split a survivor's psyche, they do it when their heart gets to be a certain beat at a certain level. Once it gets to that level, it's prime time, optimal for them to split the psyche, and that's what they are looking for. And I believe that is what she was wearing the heart monitor for. In addition to that, Allie was trafficked to and on military bases. In addition to that, Allie is able to do supernatural type of things, do unnatural things that the normal human cannot do. And that falls into the category of parapsychology, which our government was using experiments to do for clairvoyance, telekinesis, ESP, remote viewing, and astral projection. That is documented that the military did those things. That is part of the thing that they do with the American MK Ultra. They put those things into place. So most all of your American MK Ultra survivors will be able to remote view, astral project, do some sort of supernatural clairvoyant thing. That's the whole point of what they were trying to find. In addition to that, survivors are gang stalked, threatened, harassed every day. Every survivor goes through gang stalking. Allie and I have been gang stalked. We have been cyber stalked. In the last 2 years, there has been a coordinated cyber stalking, cyber bullying campaign, smear campaign against us. We have reported that to the Kern County Police Department, and we have reported that to the FBI. Cash Patel, if you could get on that, I will attach the FBI reports numbers at the end of this video. If you could look into that, I would appreciate that. But a coordinated smear campaign against somebody speaking the truth is a red flag for MK Ultra survivors. That's just how that works, in case you didn't know. The next question that I would expect Congress would want to know of me, if they called me to the floor, were the types of things that I have witnessed firsthand. What I believe the secret is about Epstein, why everybody is redacting and hiding and shuffling his files, is because the names on there will link to MK Ultra programming. From what Allie has witnessed when she was on an island in or on Epstein Island, there are several islands around there. She doesn't know which one she was on, but she was on an island. She was trafficked to the Obamas there. Cash Patel, if you could find your burn bags, if you guys could uncover the evidence, if you guys could pull the evidence from the Diddy raid that was done, you will find videos, porn videos. One of those porn videos will be of Obama on one of the islands while Allie was trafficked there. She also saw underneath where the scientists were doing human and hybrid animal experiments. That means she witnessed scientists, men in white coats with clipboards underneath Epstein Island, taking notes and documenting things that were in large vats of fluid. She said they were half human and half animal. The next thing that I have firsthand witnessed with Allie's MK Ultra programming is that she was programmed very much the same way you would program a computer. There are a lot of similar characteristics in the MK programming that would mirror programming a human brain like a computer. I've witnessed that firsthand. It's by design. So again, Cash Patel, when you are saying you're finding secret rooms with all these hidden documents, that you're uncovering burn bags, the amount of information encrypted into Allie's MK Ultra programming, and I suspect all MK survivors programming, is enough encryption information to fill 100 of your burn bags, which is why we continue to say that the survivors are the files. I don't know if the FBI and the CIA and the government and Congress and all of you people are selectively deaf, or if you just don't want to deal with the truth, but you're not hearing what people are telling you. Allie's MK Ultra system can be activated remotely in a variety of ways. People can call codes on her. People can be sent to come close to her. Her programming is able to be accessed and controlled in a variety of ways. One of those ways is remotely. The human experiments that are being done never stopped. They continue to be done underground. When we discuss sex trafficking or the sex trafficking epidemic in the United States and around the world, that is not the worst of the issues. If you find sex trafficking, when you follow that paper trail backwards, you're going to find American MK Ultra weaponized DID at its root. When you follow the paper trail backwards, that's where it will lead. That's why everybody's being quiet. That's why they're trying to cover it up. It is not because grown men were having sex with adult women on Epstein Island. It is not because grown men were paying to have sex with young adults. It's because they are weaponizing and programming children, and they are doing human and animal hybrid experiments and a whole other ton of things. In addition to the human and animal experiments and the weaponized DID and the MK Ultra programming that's being done, they are also cloning humans. I want you to think back, how long ago was it that you heard that somebody cloned Dolly the sheep? That's been decades ago. Do you think they stopped? Do you think they grew a conscience? Do you think they drew the line at trying to clone humans? They did not. They are continuing to do that. You just don't know about it. Some of the other things that are being done behind the scenes is that they are harvesting eggs from children. They are using women and young adults as breeders to carry these children, to give birth to these children that they can use at their disposal. So these children are not named. They have no family ties. They have a supply chain of infants and children that they can create and do whatever they want to. In addition to that, by the government's own admission, they have been messing with the parapsychology field. They have been doing parapsychology experiments. They have attempted to kind of rein in clairvoyance or figure out how it works or create it. Astral projecting, remote viewing, telekinesis, ESP, those types of things. Those are all embedded and encrypted into MK Ultra survivors. They've all been run through those experiments. They've all been made to do those things for the government's pleasure, for the government's control, for their ability to one-up other countries with the things that they can do. Remote viewing was used to listen in on world leaders in their meetings. It was used to do a variety of corrupt, shady shit. But those are all things that I witnessed. The Epstein Island stuff was told to me by Allie, so that makes me a first-hand witness for that. The rest of the things I've witnessed myself over the years with Allie's MK Ultra programming. I suspect that the third question that Congress would want to ask of me is how I came by my estimate of how many survivors are on American soil. In the past, I've said there are tens of millions of survivors on American soil. I suspect that to be a very, very conservative number. And I came by that number based on the ways that I know children are accessed. I came by that number based on the generational programming that I've witnessed be done, the amount of evil that I've witnessed be done. For instance, Allie was programmed in private daycares. She was programmed in public daycares. She was programmed at sex festivals when they will put somebody on a sex machine that looks like a drill, a dildo drill. That's not just a sex festival trying to sell a machine. That is used in the commission of programming, and it's done in public, which is also used in the commission of programming. So there are a ton of ways that programming is being done right under people's nose. They don't know what they're seeing. If you go back and listen to the clips that I posted about the Tuskegee experiments, about the oatmeal that they were feeding the children, about a lot of these things that were being done, look and see who was doing them. MIT was involved. Stanford was involved. The Army was involved. So when you think about all of that, decades of evil and human experiments being done for decades, all the way dating back to 1932 to the present, you can do the math on that. One of the caveats to the numbers, and why I think the numbers are conservative, is the fact that Allie has weaponized DID. That means they split her psyche and created new alters in her system. Those alters have full personality. Those alters carried the weight of the trauma. They had to stand in that trauma. Allie has 250 alternate personalities that carry the weight of the trauma, who can communicate with you, who have feelings and emotions. So Allie's not just one survivor. Allie's 251 survivors. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? A lot of the survivors will not acknowledge their DID. They either cannot because of the programming, or they will not for fear of the repercussions to them. And a lot of them are probably going to be really angry with me and say that I'm lying. I swear on my life, I'm telling you the truth. That's just by design. A lot of the survivors don't want to deal with the fact that they may or may not have alters. If you have MK Ultra programming, you have alters. That's just the whole premise of it. It's weaponized DID. Those alters are prisoners of war. So the tens of millions of survivors that I'm saying are on American soil, those are prisoners of war on American soil. And while you may not recognize the survivors of MK Ultra because they're able to move about freely, they can go to the park and they can go to the grocery store, they're not physical survivors. I mean, they're not physical prisoners. They're prisoners in their mind. Somebody has a remote to their mind. So you might be seeing people every day that are MK Ultra survivors. You just don't recognize what you're seeing. To the women in DC. From Melania Trump all the way down to this newest member, Darlene Graham. I am calling each and every one of you to stand on the battlefield with me about crimes against humanity, about what's being done to the children, about the American MK Ultra that's being permitted on our soil, about the human-animal gene splicing experiments that are being done by mad scientists like Fauci, and linking directly to Epstein and the things going on under his island, under his Zorro Ranch, and the thousands and thousands of other places and other mad scientists who are doing the same on American soil. Many of you women are mothers. Some of you are survivors yourself. There's no acceptable excuse for anybody's silence at this point. Every single one of you women stand in a position of authority where you can use your voice and raise awareness for the evil that's being done on American soil. And there's no acceptable excuse for you not to. To the American public, voting season is coming up. Pay attention to who speaks for the crimes against humanity being committed on American soil and who remains silent, and vote accordingly. We just celebrated 250 years of freedom on American soil, of being a nation. We celebrated with fireworks that caused a whole nation to look at the red, white, and blue being spewed everywhere, and nobody was looking at the darkness of our nation and the crimes against humanity that are being committed, the American MK Ultra experiments that are being done on our soil, that continue to be done by mad scientists like Fauci. Luna, on June 30th, you admitted that there were 1,600 mad scientists brought over and sanctioned to be here on American soil. Who taught those men? Who did those men teach? Who did those men train? Men like Fauci? Men like Epstein? That stuff hasn't stopped.
NIH funded putting aborted babies' fingers and scalps off the heads of aborted babies and putting them into the backs of research mice. The scalps later grew fine baby hair in the mice. They even included those disgusting photos in their research paper that you funded. Not all of those were research on coronaviruses, but some were. Thankfully, the current NIH director has said no more of this. Dr. Fauci, yes or no? Do you think that human aborted parts should be put into mice for coronavirus research?
The advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Furthermore, the Congresswoman who called out the human-animal hybrid experiments that were being done by Fauci on Congress floor. They don't only cut off parts of fetuses and splice them onto animals. Stop and think. If you have no regard for human life, if you have no regard for a child, if you have no regard for an animal, do you think you're ever going to be reined in? Do you think you have any moral compass? Do you think Fauci was going to sit there and tell the truth? Come on. To every man in D.C., from Mike Johnson to Tom Emmer, you guys were all voted into office and put into place under the presumption that you would be honest and maintain integrity. The world knows the games you guys play politic-wise. That's how you get things done. That's how you move things. You guys play politics. We don't care. But we're talking about crimes against humanity. We're talking about human-animal hybrid experiments.
Scientists have just made the first ever human pig. Scientists at the Salk Institute made a major breakthrough with bioengineering. They have created a part human, part pig embryo with both human and pig DNA.
I'm calling every congressman to the battlefield to stand against crimes against humanity, to stop doing your little half-ass oversight hearings, and to actually do something that matters to put a stop to things. If you men cannot stand in the humanity issues that are happening on American soil, involving the prisoners of war on American soil, I don't trust you to handle the political things. I'm urging every American to pay attention to how honorably the Congress people and the people up for election stand on the crimes against humanity issue. It's been my experience that maybe a few months before elections, that everybody scrambles to take a stance. The crimes against humanity is the one stance everybody runs away from. Isn't that right, Tom? I'm sick of the bullshit. I'm sick of everybody's silence in the worst type of crimes that could ever be committed. The fact that they're being allowed to continue and have continued for decades in a nation that's supposedly at the top of the food chain is disgusting. Donald John Trump, you're the man that sits at the highest seat of authority in the United States of America. And I'm just a mom. 20 years ago, I believed that we lived in the land of the free and the home of the brave because we were Americans. I believed that crimes against humanity are things that happened in third world countries. Back then, I wasn't prepared to give witness to the evil that I've seen now. When I adopted Allie, her mind, body, and soul began to purge itself of the evil that she had been through. Things so dark and so horrific, I didn't know they had a name. But I now know those names are American MK Ultra, satanic ritual abuse, and weaponized DID. Our government and our military brought mad scientists here who began weaponizing children. Every living survivor of American MK Ultra and weaponized DID is a prisoner of war on American soil. And I suspect there are tens of millions of prisoners of war standing on American soil today. We the people have been pressing you and your administration for the truth of Epstein Island. You and I both know that Epstein is an insignificant player in the evil and corruption that's actually going on. But I expect your administration to handle the truth with respect and integrity. I expect them to treat survivors with respect and kindness. And every one of your administration that you've placed in a position of authority, including Todd Blanche, has failed miserably. The failure of your administration reflects poorly on you. It makes you look tone deaf, unaware, or complicit. Disrespectfully speaking, Trump, get your house in order. We're talking about the most egregious event in all of humanity. Children being placed through torture to split and fracture their psyche, that is later weaponized so somebody can control it like a remote. The brutal experiments being done on animals, the MK Ultra also being done on animals. The rape, shock, electroshock, and torture being done on children and animals. The human and animal hybrid experiments and the gene splicing of humans and animals. There is nothing more egregious than the human experiments that have been being done. There is no excuse for anyone in your administration to gaslight, to lie, to play games, to do street theater, to do sleight of hand to the American public. If your administration leaders cannot handle and not stand in the evil that's been done to the children and the animals, then they need to be fired on the spot. I have no desire to live peacefully with anyone who does not possess sanctity of human life. Nor will I comply with evil and cowards who won't stand up for the children and the animals that are being brutalized. Consider this me throwing the gauntlet. On behalf of we the people, I am demanding you call for a full, unbiased, independent investigation into the crimes against humanity that I speak of. The congressional hearing that Congress did on MK Ultra was a circus sideshow and should in no way be considered a proper investigation. It is well within your authority to call for an investigation and to make sure that it gets done in the appropriate manner. When the U.S. government, the military, and the CIA brought 1,600 mad scientists onto American soil and sanctioned any work that they chose to do, human experiments began to be done. Those progressed into experiments on animals and children, and they continue to this day. I am asking you to call for an investigation and to get a panel of independent investigators that will speak with the survivors and gather the information they have. Based on the first-hand information that I have from my daughter, and while I am still under oath, places that the investigators can start looking are the White House, Obama era, Biden era, and before, DC, Congress, the islands, and underneath the islands at the experiments that were being done there. Big Pharma plays a role in human experiments. CPS, Child Protective Services, across all of the states. Wellness centers perform MK Ultra type of programming in plain sight. Churches of all religions and denominations are involved in MK Ultra programming. Hollywood, Epstein, and the men that link to him. NASA is involved in MK Ultra programming. Colleges, universities, sororities, fraternities, and secret societies are involved. The KKK, as well as the Black Panthers. The field of psychology. There are lots of more places I can list, but that will start for now. When you understand how these things work, everybody's works like a well-oiled machine in this cog to traffic, program, and do human experiments. Everybody covers for everybody. Everybody gatekeeps. It is a well-organized machine. My daughter is a prisoner of war on American soil, as are tens of millions of other survivors that are still living. I will not comply, and I will not shut up. And with that, I yield my time to my daughter.
My name is Allison Leilani Ray Carter. I'm 32 years old. Under penalty of perjury, I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God. Let's talk about MKUltra. Hybrid human animal experiments, gene splicing. I've talked to all of y'all about this for years, but I don't think people understand the weight of what's coming. I'll see you soon.